Depending on who you ask, you'll get very different answers about the state of the music industry today. If you ask the CEOs at Spotify and LiveNation, they'll say it's never been better, and they have the record-breaking profits to back that up. But if you ask music nerds like me, you'll hear complaints that music is actually dying. The answer to who's right depends on how you categorize music. Before Spotify took over, we had names for scenes and genres that communicated our music tastes. You liked SoundCloud rap, or the Tiny Mixtapes blog, or the Detroit techno scene. But for better and for worse, the melting pot of streaming has eroded those boundary lines that we relied on to describe what we cared about and why. Now, indie is just a marketing term, everything borrows from hip-hop, and underground can mean you have millions of monthly listeners. Without their separate worlds and separate audiences, artists as different as Taylor Swift and OK Lou now compete for the same pool of attention. And in the eyes of most fans and algorithms, it's all just capital M music now. So while it's true that music revenue is growing, thanks to Spotify's price hikes and Ticketmaster's monopoly, we've lost visibility into what's thriving and what's dying beneath the surface. To stop talking past each other and figure out what's actually happening in the music world, we need a new vocabulary to explain who's winning, who's losing, and why this imbalance threatens the future of music for all of us. So if scenes are dead and genres are dead, then what's next? Let's fucking do this. Hi, I'm MK. Welcome to my world. We'll use this grid to break down the 4 categories of music in the post-streaming era. Let's first look at motivation. On the right side, it's internal motivation. This is music you actively seek out. On the left side, it's external motivation. This is driven by external groups and environments. This is the case with our first category, activity music. Think about the music played by a wedding DJ. Most people would never listen to Sweet Caroline or Don't Stop Believing on their own time. But when it's midnight on a sweaty dance floor in a mid-tier hotel reception hall, everyone sings along. As the name suggests, activity music makes the most sense when paired with a specific environment or activity. The test of whether something fits in this category is if the activity stops, do you keep listening? Here the answer is typically no. Other examples include spin class playlists that set your pace, arena songs that hype up a sports crowd, or lo-fi beats to study to. Because soundtracking activities is a great way to get consistent engagement, Spotify has made a big push to support this type of music. They actually announced this new smart filters feature while I was working on this piece, where you can now see activity as the first category that they prioritize. So it should come as no surprise that activity music has exploded for both artists and listeners in the streaming era. It's one of the biggest winners so far. Our second category also thrives on Spotify, but here the motivation flips from external to internal. You seek out mood music when you want to amplify a personal emotional experience. Think of sad music after a breakup, teenage favorites when you're feeling nostalgic, or some silly TikTok songs when you want to laugh. Unlike activity music, mood music can follow you anywhere. It's less reliant on where you are and what you're doing, and more about how you're feeling. Whether you're feeling depressed on the couch or reflective on a nighttime drive, you can find a playlist to soundtrack that experience. The test for mood music is, can you only listen when you're feeling a certain way? Here the answer would be yes. This is another category that's winning in the Spotify era. It's actually their second new filtering option just below activity music. Streaming platforms have realized that we're full of constantly changing emotions, so there are endless opportunities to serve us the perfect emotional soundtrack. Our third category brings in a new dimension with the vertical axis, analytical versus emotional. Activity music and mood music are primarily emotional, affecting the atmosphere of your internal and external environments. But identity music, our third category, is more analytical. It's about constructing who you are through what you listen to. This is the world of fandoms. Your Swifties, your Roni Ponies, your BTS army. Identity music thrives on the story, the values, and the aesthetics that go beyond the music. That's why, although it's always existed, it's exploded in the Instagram era where world building can really take root. At its most extreme, these fandoms are breaking down lyrics and plot lines in a way that's more like a literary community than a musical one. But identity music can also be something more casual, like listening to the same thing as your friends to fit in. Either way, just because the community comes first doesn't mean that the music is secondary in quality. It's just that the music can't be separated from those external motivators of community and narrative. And this mode isn't just limited to big fandoms. Plenty of people listen to smaller artists because they're attracted to their outsider persona or edgy energy. Think of someone like Alex G, who's praised as this model of underground independent success. The test for identity music is, does the art or artist come first? If you'd pre-order an artist's next record before it's released, that's a good sign that identity is at play. Here, Spotify's promotional tools have grown to support those connections built on social media. Pre-release campaigns, exclusive fan content, and artist playlists all feed the parasocial relationships that identity music depends on. This is music as brand loyalty, and it's been a goldmine for platforms and labels that have learned to cultivate stan armies as reliable revenue streams. So as we've seen, all of our first 3 categories have adapted well to the incentives of the modern tech era, but our final category is struggling the most. And whether you consider yourself a fan of this category or not, its decline affects the future of music for all of us. Art music is analytical and internally driven. This is the listening mode I'm in on my daily hot girl walks, where I'm focused on music as the main event. What do I think of this melody? Are these chords interesting? What's the impact of that particular instrument or structural choice that the artist made? The question isn't, is this fun to work out to? It's, is this interesting enough to be the sole focus of my attention? Here you might think of experimental legends like Burial or Aphex Twin, or more recent experimental acts like Vanessa Amara and Becky and the Birds. But you can be a pop star or a rap artist and still make art music. All of these categories extend beyond the fluid boundaries of genres. The test for art music is, can it hold your full attention and do something unexpected with it? By calling it art music, I'm not trying to say that it's better or smarter than any other category. There's an art to making good music to run to and good music to cry to. But just like a poster from your bedroom might not make sense in a museum, some music isn't made to be closely studied. And this is where debates can often get heated. When people say I love music, they can all mean very different things. One loves music to rap along with, another loves music to get in their feelings. One loves music from an idol they can root for, and another loves music that stretches their brain. These diverse groups will rarely agree on what they think is good or bad. The reality is, none of these options is better than the other, but they're all different choices and different experiences. The problem for art music is that it generates terrible metrics. People are less likely to loop it endlessly, add it to workout playlists, and share artist streaming numbers for clout. When Spotify compares a couple deep listens of art music to 50 passive streams from another category, they can only see it as a failure. So art music is dying because algorithms count plays and ignore impact, and that's bad news for the future of music. The thing is, music survival depends on a delicate balance, where every category can grow, adapt, and influence each other. While I've sketched out 4 equal categories with distinct boundaries, the messy reality looks something more like this. Art music has always taken up less space, but it's increasingly getting squeezed out in the streaming era. This imbalance explains those complaints that all new music is starting to sound the same, because despite its smaller audience, art music has a wide-ranging impact. You can think of it as the music industry's research lab. Artists are here to experiment and try new things that they know won't appeal to everyone. A lot of those experiments end up being pretty bad, but the ones that succeed trickle their way into every other category. Charlie XCX's Brat, for example, wouldn't have happened without the influence of experimental producer A.G. Cook. And this dialogue goes both ways. Art music feeds off popular trends around the world, from drill to amapiano, to develop new sounds that next year's pop artists will take mainstream. It's a virtuous cycle that's been derailed by tech's misaligned incentives and our lack of language to discuss that impact. We're already feeling the consequences in real time. A 2024 Spotify report showed that 74% of Gen Z describes their generation as mainstream rather than fringe. This is a big shift from 59% just a few years earlier. To go back to our earlier analogy, you may never make time to go to the museum, but you'd probably recognize it as a bad thing if all museums disappeared. That's the risk we're facing in music. And the concern isn't just that art music will die, but that this breakdown will create a vacuum where all types of music lose their impact and relevance. If the only music Spotify pushes is secondary to an activity, a mood, or an identity, then there's no reason corporate AI music couldn't grow to fill that void. We won't be listening closely enough to notice until all music is so watered down we don't even care to listen. So what do? I could tell you to buy more music on Bandcamp or go to more shows. I could tell you to reach out to small artists and tell them that you care about them. Those are all great ways to support artists in the short term, but they won't create the systemic change that we really need. The first step is naming the problem, and that's been my goal here. But honestly, this is just the beginning of me trying to figure this out, because this isn't just a music problem. It's an issue for all creative fields being flattened by algorithms, and I kind of like living in a world where there are cool art scenes to hang out in and good art to enjoy. So I'm going to keep digging into this, and I'll be back with more soon. In the meantime, if you have some ideas on how to fix things, I'd love to hear from you too. Until next time.
Let's fucking do this.